The morning shift at Harbor Memorial began with laughter that never reached kind eyes. Emily Carter adjusted the sleeves of her plain blue scrubs while balancing a tray of medical supplies. She had been at the hospital for only 6 days, and everyone seemed convinced she did not belong there. Her spotless record from nursing school meant nothing beside years of battlefield medicine the senior staff assumed only military veterans possessed. "Easy there, rookie," one orderly joked as she nearly bumped into him. "Try not to faint if somebody actually starts bleeding today." A few Marines escorting an injured training recruit overheard the comment and laughed. One of them glanced at Emily's small frame and smirked. "They've got children working here now." Emily forced a polite smile and continued walking without answering. She had learned long ago that silence often protected secrets better than arguments. Chief Nurse Dolores watched from across the station. "Emily," she called sharply. "Inventory duty again. Leave the trauma cases to people with experience." "Yes, Mom," Emily replied calmly. The words stung, but she never complained. No one noticed the faded scar running across her shoulder beneath her uniform. No one wondered why she instinctively mapped every exit whenever she entered a room. Nobody questioned why loud noises never startled her while everyone else flinched. She kept those answers buried. Just before noon, alarms shattered the ordinary rhythm of the emergency department. Multiple incoming casualties. A paramedic shouted through the radio, "Marine convoy accident. 6 critical, ETA 3 minutes." The emergency room exploded into motion. Doctors rushed toward trauma bays. Stretchers rolled across polished floors. Blood units were prepared. The Marines who had mocked Emily only hours earlier carried wounded comrades through the entrance, their uniforms stained with dust and crimson streaks. One young corporal clutched another Marine whose breathing grew weaker every second. "Help him," he cried desperately. Emily instinctively stepped forward. Chief Nurse Dolores blocked her path. "Stay with supplies." Emily froze. The first surgeon attempted to stabilize the most critical patient. Seconds later, monitors screamed, "We're losing pressure." Another doctor shouted, "Collapsed lung." A third yelled, "I need another set of hands." Nobody moved quickly enough. Emily could already see what everyone else had missed. The Marine's airway was failing because fractured ribs had shifted during transport. She spoke quietly. "Rotate him 3 degrees left." The surgeon barely looked up. "What? 3 degrees?" Emily repeated. No, perhaps it was confidence in her voice. Perhaps desperation. Either way, they listened. The monitor immediately steadied. The surgeon stared at the screen. "How did you—" "No time," Emily interrupted. "Needle decompression now." He obeyed. Air escaped with a sharp hiss. The Marine's oxygen climbed almost instantly. Silence spread across the trauma bay before the room erupted into frantic action again. The same orderly who had mocked Emily whispered under his breath, "That wasn't luck." Emily moved to another patient before anyone could question her. She anticipated every complication moments before it happened. She identified hidden internal bleeding from nothing more than subtle skin color changes. She directed nurses without raising her voice. Within 20 minutes, every Marine remained alive. Even Chief Nurse Dolores found herself following Emily's instructions without realizing it. The senior trauma surgeon finally stepped back. "Where did you train?" Emily simply smiled. "Different hospitals." Outside, rain hammered against the windows. No one noticed 2 black SUVs slowing beside the emergency entrance. Inside the vehicle sat heavily armed men wearing civilian clothes and concealed tactical gear. One of them studied a photograph. "Positive identification." Another nodded. "She's here." The leader checked his watch. "Move when everyone is distracted." Back inside, Emily washed blood from her hands. For a brief moment she stared into the mirror. The quiet reflection looking back seemed nothing like the woman she had once been. She whispered almost silently, "I promised I'd never wear that life again." An explosion thundered through the hospital entrance. Glass burst inward. Patients screamed. Masked gunmen stormed into the emergency department carrying assault rifles. "Nobody move," their leader roared. Doctors dropped to the floor. Marines instinctively reached for weapons they no longer carried. Chief Nurse Dolores stood frozen. One gunman fired into the ceiling. "We're looking for someone," he shouted. The leader unfolded a photograph. His eyes swept across the terrified staff. Then they stopped. He pointed directly at Emily. "There she is." Every heartbeat inside the emergency room seemed to stop at once. Every face turned toward Emily. Chief Nurse Dolores stared in disbelief, then instinctively stepped in front of her. "She's just a rookie nurse," she pleaded. "If you want someone, you've made a mistake." The gunman smiled coldly. "No mistake." He fired a warning shot into the floor, sending frightened patients scrambling beneath beds. Smoke drifted through the emergency department as alarms echoed across the hospital. "Bring her to me." Emily slowly raised her hands, her expression calm while panic consumed everyone around her. The Marines exchanged helpless glances. They were wounded, exhausted, and unarmed. Every instinct told them to fight, yet doing so would only get innocent people killed. Emily looked toward the nearest trauma bay. A frightened little boy clung to his injured father, crying uncontrollably. "Please," she said quietly. "Don't hurt them." The leader laughed. You still care about strangers. That's exactly why Command wanted you alive. Those words froze Emily for only a heartbeat. Command. A name from a life she had buried forever. One of the younger gunmen stepped closer, lowering his rifle slightly. I never believed the ghost was real. The leader answered without taking his eyes off Emily. She was, until she disappeared. The Marines looked at one another in confusion. Ghost. Emily slowly exhaled. You've got the wrong person. No, the leader replied. Petty Officer Emily Carter, former Navy SEAL operator, call sign Ghost. The emergency room fell completely silent. Even the wounded Marines forgot their pain. Chief Nurse Dolores whispered, a Navy SEAL? Emily closed her eyes for a moment. I resigned. You vanished, the leader corrected. There's a difference. He motioned for his men to surround her. No tricks. Emily quietly studied every reflection in the polished floor, every shadow on the walls, every weapon angle. Old instincts awakened without permission. She counted. 9 attackers. 2 guarding the entrance. 3 covering hostages. 1 sniper visible through the shattered doorway. 3 within arm's reach. The calculation took less than 2 seconds. The leader grabbed a nurse and pressed a pistol against her head. Walk. Emily nodded. I'm coming. She took 1 slow step, then another. As she reached the center of the room, the overhead lights suddenly flickered because of the earlier explosion. Less than 1 second of darkness. That was enough. Emily slammed a metal instrument tray into the nearest attacker's face. The crashing steel echoed through the ER as his rifle spun across the floor. She caught the weapon before it landed. 2 controlled shots shattered the lights above the remaining gunmen instead of striking people. Darkness swallowed the room. The Marines instantly understood. Move. One shouted. Despite their injuries, they tackled 2 attackers while Emily disappeared into the shadows. A gunman screamed. Another crashed through a glass partition. Emily flowed through the darkness with impossible speed, using hospital carts, walls, and overturned stretchers as cover. She never wasted movement. The leader fired wildly. Find her. A voice answered from somewhere behind him. You should have left when you had the chance. He spun. Too late. Emily disarmed him with 1 precise strike and pinned him against the nurse's station. The remaining attackers hesitated. 1 Marine corporal finally reached a fallen rifle. Drop your weapons. Gunfire erupted again. The sniper outside opened fire through the broken entrance. Windows exploded inward. Emily shoved the captured leader aside and sprinted directly toward the incoming fire.
She's crazy,
someone shouted. She wasn't. She had already spotted the sniper's reflection in an ambulance mirror outside. Sliding across the wet pavement, she fired once. The sniper's rifle fell silent. Inside, the remaining attackers lost their advantage. Within moments, the Marines overwhelmed them. The last gunman dropped his weapon and raised trembling hands. Silence settled over the emergency room except for the distant wail of approaching sirens. Everyone stared at Emily. Blood streaked her scrubs. Her breathing remained perfectly steady. 1 wounded Marine slowly stood despite the pain in his shoulder.
You
saved all of us. Emily looked around at the frightened patients, exhausted nurses, and doctors who had mocked her only hours before. I was only doing my job. Before anyone could answer, the thunder of helicopter blades echoed above the hospital roof. Emily looked toward the ceiling. She recognized that sound immediately. Extraction had arrived. Hospital staff rushed to the shattered entrance as black helicopters settled onto the rooftop. Within seconds, heavily armed Navy SEAL operators flooded the building with disciplined precision. Their weapons remained lowered the moment they spotted Emily standing quietly beside the frightened patients. The team leader removed his helmet, walked directly toward her, and came to a flawless salute. Commander Carter, he said respectfully, we're relieved to find you alive. The Marines watched in stunned silence. Only hours earlier they had laughed at the quiet rookie nurse carrying supply trays through the hallways. Now America's most elite warriors were saluting her as their former commander. Emily returned the salute, then lowered her hand. I told command I was finished. We know, the SEAL officer replied, but those men weren't after military secrets. They wanted you. A chief nurse Dolores stepped forward, still struggling to process everything she had witnessed. You mean she really was on? The officer nodded. The youngest combat leader our unit ever trusted with classified rescue operations. She saved 37 hostages overseas and brought every member of her team home. Around us, she's known by another name. He smiled toward Emily. Ghost. The room became completely silent. One of the wounded Marines slowly approached her. Earlier that morning he had mocked her without a second thought. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. I judged you before I knew anything about you. Emily offered a tired smile. You judged a nurse by her appearance. Today that nearly cost all of us. Just promise you'll never make that mistake again. I won't, he answered. Emergency crews escorted the captured attackers outside while federal investigators secured the hospital. Reporters gathered behind police barriers, desperate for answers, but Emily slipped away before cameras could find her. She returned to the trauma bay where the first injured Marine lay recovering. His vital signs were strong now. He opened his eyes as she adjusted his blanket. They said you fought like a legend, he whispered. Emily shook her head gently. No, legends don't save lives, people do. Doctors, nurses, medics, Marines, CLs, we all protect each other. The young Marine smiled. Thank you. As dawn painted the horizon with soft golden light, Chief Nurse Dolores found Emily changing back into clean scrubs. I misjudged you, Dolores admitted. I kept giving you the smallest jobs because I thought you weren't ready. Emily folded her blood-stained uniform neatly. Every job matters. Even inventory. Dolores laughed through tears. I'd be honored if you stayed. Emily looked around the emergency room. Broken glass had already been swept away. Patients were safe. Nurses comforted families. Doctors worked side by side with Marines, no longer divided by pride. This place doesn't need a hero, Emily said softly. It needs people who refuse to give up on each other. The SEAL commander approached one final time. If you ever want your trident back, there's always a place for you. Emily reached into her pocket and touched the old Navy SEAL insignia she had carried every day since leaving the service. For a long moment she considered it. Then she closed her hand. My mission changed, she replied. Now I save lives before battles become funerals. The commander smiled proudly. That's the hardest mission of all. He saluted once more before walking away. As the helicopters disappeared into the morning sky, every Marine in the hospital stood at attention. Without a word, they saluted the rookie nurse they had once dismissed. Emily returned the gesture with quiet humility before walking back toward the emergency department, where another ambulance had just arrived. Another patient needed help. Another life could still be saved. She picked up a fresh pair of gloves, smiled gently at the frightened family entering through the doors, and got back to work without expecting applause, recognition, or thanks. Because true heroes never need the world to know who they are. They simply answer the call when others cannot. If this story reminded you that courage often hides behind the humblest faces, subscribe to the channel, because the next unbelievable story may change the way you see ordinary people forever.